My name is Boram Kim. I'm an assistant program specialist at the International Information and Networking Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage in the Asia Pacific region under the auspices of UNESCO. Working within the framework of the 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage, we operate information and networking programs to support UNESCO's strategic plans with the 48 member states of the Asia Pacific region. Today, each CAP and UNESCO Bangkok office are co-hosting the session 3 of the ICH webinar series entitled Regional Collaboration Among Higher Education Institutions for ICH Safeguarding. For today's webinar, 4 cultural practitioners from different regional networks of higher education institutions are gathered here today. Before we start with their presentations, I would like to welcome Dr. Tim Curtis, the Chief of UNESCO Living Heritage Entity, to welcome our audience and presenters. Mr. Tim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Boram, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, dear colleagues, and greetings from UNESCO headquarters. On behalf of UNESCO and specifically of our Living Heritage Entity, which oversees the implementation of the Intangible Cultural Heritage Convention, I'd like to warmly congratulate ENCATC and the UNESCO our office in Bangkok for the successful organization of several of these ICH webinar series over the past few months. Also like to thank those of you, and I see from other regions in Latin America and Africa, who have joined now in this important webinar. The last few issues have touched upon several key topics, and I'm very glad that today we're going to discuss interregional collaboration amongst higher education institutions for intangible cultural heritage safeguarding. As you are all well aware, integrating intangible cultural heritage into higher education programs is actually a crucial component of the overall safeguarding approach that is needed as we go forward. Higher education institutions play an important role in training future decision makers, planners and administrators who will be working in the field of safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage and making important policy decisions and so on around in the field. So although some long established academic careers, have trained professionals, centers have trained professionals in various disciplines, and they have worked and studied living heritage or intangible cultural heritage. The idea of a professional field as a whole is relatively new. The complexities and immense opportunities it offers require professionals with a multidisciplinary training in both content and methodology. By integrating intangible cultural heritage into training programs, higher education institutes contribute to strengthening the capacities of current and future professionals involved in the safeguarding of this kind of cultural heritage. And so from this perspective, building networks among these higher education institutions becomes a key strategy to enhance the work. Given the novelty of the field, every institution is kind of learning by doing in setting up programs in the field of intangible cultural heritage, and therefore facilitating exchange of experiences and knowledge through universities' networking becomes key to enriching the programs and better understanding how and what are the various approaches to developing this professional milieu, so to speak. So these platforms are here to reflect together on the training needs, on the challenges of interdisciplinarity, and of course to rethink how training programs respond to the needs of this field, which itself continually evolving and has dramatically evolved, in fact, over the last, say, 15 years, particularly since the convention was adopted. And momentum is building, and definitely now at a time when the COVID-19 pandemic has affected not only the ways and spaces of learning, but also fundamentally has also highlighted the pertinence and importance of intangible cultural heritage. Having these networks to exchange and discuss becomes fundamental. The networking initiatives that will be presented in this webinar should, I hope, serve as think tanks to generate new and innovative modalities and contents. We all need to train professionals who can build bridges between academia, civil society, communities of practitioners, and can understand the field of living heritage in a holistic way in light of challenges we are facing today. So with that, I'd like to congratulate the organizers and really thank all the participants for being here and look very much forward to hearing about the work that will be done. Thank you.
Thank you for your warm welcoming remarks. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Mirva Aranda Escalanta, the Technical Director of the Regional Center for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage of Latin America, Crispia, for the opening remarks. Mirva, the floor is...
Thank you very much, Baram. My warmest greetings to all of you, friends and colleagues in the ICH field. While our General Director, Adriana Molano, cannot be with us today, she's most certainly pleased about the ICH webinar series. In her place, I will deliver the opening remarks. My name is Mirva Aranda, Technical Director at the Regional Center for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage of Latin America, CRESPIAL. It is a great pleasure to be here with you today. As Tim mentioned, all over the world, UNESCO and its partner organizations have carried out initiatives to strengthen the cooperation and networking amongst higher education institutions to maximize their potential in contributing to the safeguarding of ICH. It is crucial to take note that these efforts are directed to amplify cooperation and networking among higher education institutions for ICH safeguarding. This is mainly because this is not a single institution problem, but a transnational issue reaching a global scale and must be faced accordingly. However, building a higher education network and an effective cooperation mechanism are complex tasks situated within diverse contexts which may pose technical difficulties and resource deficiency. This is why the session 3 of the ICH webinar series is deeply important as we come here today with thoughts and questions on how we can connect effectively with each other to include the higher education sector in ICH safeguard. From our perspective, the articulation of ICH and higher education faces at least two major challenges. On one hand, ICH has to be addressed critically as a subject of study or research. Latin America academia has a long-standing tradition of critical thinking, and it is important to rethink the ICH from a Latino point of view. This will result in an enhanced comprehension of ICH and therefore will broaden the scope and possibilities of safeguarding, highlighting new and improved ways of facing our diversity and traditions. On the other hand, ICH has a lot to offer to improve higher education, not only by incorporating other ways of learning and teaching, but also by including other ways of thinking about the world, as well as the living beings that coexist in it, both human and non-human, and the different ways in which we all interact. Far from validating ICH on an academic environment or translating it into academic categories, the challenge is to broaden academic perspectives in order to recognize ICH as a legitimate knowledge by its own categories and its own epistemology. It is not an easy task. Today, as we see how affected we are by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, may we remind ourselves that even before the pandemic, ICH safeguarding had always been a very challenging chore, one that required us to know and value the cultural meanings of the past and to deploy mechanisms based on cooperation and solidarity. At CRESPIAL, our goal is to foster regional integration and cooperation for the safeguarding of the intangible cultural heritage in the framework of sustainable development and intercultural dialogue. With this purpose, we promote the conditions for the development of public policies and initiatives, cultural governance, and the active participation of the communities across the 16 countries that are part of our center, contributing to the well-being, dignity, and creativity of their populations. It has never been an easy task, but I am sure that it will be less difficult if we face it together. Let us have a productive session. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your warm opening remarks. So just before we get started, I would like to deliver some housekeeping. announcements. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box in your YouTube control panel. We will have time for questions at the end. And now I'd like to turn the time over to today's moderator, Maria Frick. Maria Frick has 15 years of experience as a consultant for international cooperation agencies for development in Latin America and the Caribbean. Currently, she is responsible AI of the culture program of the UNESCO Montevideo Regional Science Office for Latin America and the Caribbean, and the multi-country office for Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Boran Kim. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the role today and the opportunity to follow up the dialogue we began last year in Bogota. Thank you, and it's great to be speaking with all of you today. This third session of the webinar series will feature our 4 presentations to discuss different network initiatives among higher education institutions for intangible cultural heritage, teaching and safeguarding across the world. For the first presentation, I would like to invite Dr. Cristina Ortega Nuere. Dr. Ortega is the former president of the European Network for Cultural Management and Policy, and currently works as the Chief Scientific and Operating Officer of the World Leisure Organization. She is with us in this session to speak about a networking initiative among higher education institutions for ICH safeguarding in Europe. Ms. Ortega, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. It is a pleasure to be with you today. And well, during the last years, UNESCO has been promoting initiatives in different regions. For instance, in 2017 in Montevideo in Latin America, and the creation of the Asia Pacific Education Network for safeguarding ICH in order to advance teaching, research, community services. Moreover, in 2018, UNESCO conducted a survey on ICH in African universities and found out that only one program focused on ICH. However, there are multiple programs related to it. Well, being ENCATC, the European Network of Cultural Management and Policy, and having the consultative status with UNESCO, this is a great opportunity for the organization to participate in such debate. ENCATC has already worked on ICH-related issues. The organization has produced a mapping on which it was found out that 1,047 educational programs throughout Europe include ICH subjects, and which additionally includes recommendations to integrate ICH in higher educational curricula, knowledge sharing, cross-disciplinary pollination, and cross-assessment of policies enlisting the needs of the job market. Here you have the map of Europe, and you have to bear in mind that as any research, there are some limitations. You can see that those countries with the borders in white, the research was carried out in the official languages, and those ones in red only in English. So I'm sure that there will be more programs in the official languages, but at least it provides us with a picture. Well, if we look a little bit closer, we can see that there is a total of 146 programs at all levels that have been found containing ICH subjects, meaning that those subjects or modules contain the term ICH or an equivalent in their title. And you can see the big presence of those programs in countries such as Turkey, Germany, or France. Well, if we look closer, we see that some of those subjects specifically contain the term ICH in their title. Here you can see the title of those subjects. You can see that there are general approaches like introduction to ICH or very specific subtopics. Also, you can see the framework, the program title. They are different ones. Some of them, for example, belong to human sciences and areas like communication, history, ethnology, and so on. And you can also see that the types of programs are of different level, undergraduate and postgraduate programs. Well, here you can see more examples. And you can also see in this graph the different programs with ICH in title, that they are not so many. Those are all the programs that we found in Europe, okay? And you can see the level of those programs. Most of them are master's, postgraduate programs, but there are some that are also at the bachelor level as well as the PhD programs. As closing remarks of this mapping that we carry out in Europe, I can say that the number of programs involving ICH is significantly high, 3,179 over 1,000 programs analyzed in the mapping in the 45 countries. 146 programs have been found across those countries which include subjects dealing with ICH, and only 36 subjects solely focus on ICH. I can also say that the term ICH is barely used. They use other terms, and only French universities across all the analyzed countries use the term patrimoine immaterial. And there are only 4 programs containing the term ICH in their title. Well, I'm sure that, I mean, this brings opportunities for further discussion, but now I would like to focus on the topics of this presentation. In order to gather information for today, what we did is the 17th of July, we organized a talk with our members. We invited them to a talk like a focus group and try to gather information, real and fresh information, in order to answer the following questions that you can see on the screen. I will start with the first one. How has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the life of higher education networks, our members, and the individuals, professionals for ICH safeguarding? Well, from their experience, ENCATC members agree that universities had to turn all their higher educational programs into an online format. However, now higher educational institutions are preparing for a blended format, which would allow students to maintain engagement with each other easily than if full online programs were pursued. Also, one example of creative professionals joining forces during these times is that of designers who have started to create academies as an alternative to their usual tasks in order to share knowledge. However, another relevant issue raised during the discussion is the international contingency. If students only come from domestic circles, this may be problematic since it may affect many universities where the international students' body is growing. Moreover, ICH studies research involves fieldwork, and this has been particularly problematic for students writing their thesis. In the same line, the field of culture involves participatory work, personal contact, and travel. Therefore, these issues will have to be rethought given the uncertain length of the COVID-19 circumstances. Well, depending on the field work concerns, we also have to think on what happens with communities safeguarding on ICH. And it is now more than ever important to provide informal educational and teaching to these groups because they have become quite isolated. Therefore, it is our task now as well as to think what to do and reorganize this contact and flow of info between universities and communities. At the city level, safeguarding ICH is also becoming a challenge nowadays, since, for instance, local festivals cannot be celebrated And this is also tradition and part of the city's role in safeguarding ICH. Well, regarding the following question, in terms of technical conditions and resource availability, I have to say that ENCATC members consider this issue entails a double take, since the situation will vary if we compare communities with higher education institutions. Resources available in higher education institutions will also be different depending on the country's capabilities. Do all universities in Europe have the same availability to resources? It is difficult to address issues of teaching at higher education institutions and then the ICH situation in general. One thing depends on the other to a certain extent, but problems and how to address them are not necessarily similar. Well, regarding how do active networks contribute to increasing young people's interest, I would like to say that in general terms, it is believed that young people involved in ICH activities are already enrolled in ICH or similar studies. Otherwise, it does not seem clear whether participants in such activities, although coming from different sectors and working areas, are really engaged in the activities because they are aware that they are contributing to the safeguarding of ICH. With regards to this matter, ENCATC members consider very important to rethink how to approach these activities to the younger audience, how to make them appealing for young people to contribute. As a successful example, I would like to point out the Maastricht University, the City Hall, and the province of Limburg did a cooperation project by which young design students from different European countries were brought to the city of Maastricht, which has ICH label. The idea was to encourage them to think about Europe and create something of value. And in the end, these students, inspired by the Maastricht Treaty, created a common European fashion program. Therefore, this was inspired by ICH, but portrayed in a different manner. And maybe this is what young students need most in order to feel engaged to participate in ICH activities. I remember that one ENCATC member also raised the importance of making sure we, as cultural professionals, do not open the gap between generations, since the situation in the European Union is not the same as in other parts of the world. Well, in order to gather information about how do higher education networks for ICH safeguarding build a relationship with communities, tradition bearers, the larger public in general, we also ask our members, and they put different examples on how this is being carried out at the moment. As highlights in the western part of France, the link with communities which are most safeguarding ICH is rather achieved through the Office du Patrimoine Culturel Immatériel than from regional universities. However, this office also offers university courses. Therefore, it certainly plays an important role between communities and universities. Another example set is that of universities closely working with UNESCO on safeguarding the textile tradition of making silk. This is part of a project of cultural tourism in which a connection between different stakeholders is established within the same project. And in terms of the fifth question that we chose, on this occasion, ENCATC members also show the importance of finding bridges between topics that can bring new perspectives and raise awareness of ICH. One way to achieve so is by doing joint projects of different areas. For instance, Even though UNESCO normally organizes a single forum focused on World Heritage, now this has been mixed with the Young Researchers Forum on ICH. On this project, World Heritage young professionals were informed on ICH and they had no notions of it and communities. Therefore, this has been an eye-opener experience for them. Younger generations are not learning at home certain knowledge that does not necessarily come naturally today, and therefore it is our task to raise their awareness of ICH and its importance, since lots of cultural creation, production, communication involves interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity knowledge. Therefore, the question is how to group ICH into different sections in order to make it accessible to the audience. And lastly, I would like to make this conclusion that having a universal model or practice to spread knowledge on ICH is rather complicated. But what is important is to keep in mind the human creativity and the possibility of change and evolution. Cultural heritage was a creation at a time. We tend to forget that we call now cultural heritage was first an answer to a problem, and it was a creation. And it is important to understand where we come from, and this can also help engage the younger generations. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Ortega. I don't know if you are listening better now. My sound is better.
Yeah, it's better now.
Thank you. With almost 20 years of operation and presence in 38 countries, I guess that despite the complications that you mentioned, the European network has achieved a strong consolidation, both in terms of institutional and governance aspects, but also regarding its mandate, identity, and partnering strategies, which I believe this experience may provide us with learnings and experiences that could be capitalized on by other regions, now to address questions of expandability of higher education networks. So thank you. Now I would like to invite Dr. Jacob Mapara for the second presentation. Dr. Mapara is Acting Director of the Institute of Lifelong Learning and Development Studies and Chinhoyi, I don't know if I'm saying well, University of Technology in Zimbabwe, where he is also the chairperson of the Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Living Heritage. He is with us in this session to speak about a university network initiative in Southern Africa. Mr. Mapara, please take the floor.
Yeah, hello everyone. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to talk on what the SciChanet, which is a network of higher education institutions in Southern Africa. And SciChanet means Southern Africa Intangible Cultural Heritage Academic Network. That's what it is. So I will speak to the background of what led to the formation of that network and what the network has been doing and intends to do, especially in the recent developments of COVID-19. You will realize that we are talking of a network which came about in 2015 originally as Southern African Intangible Cultural Heritage Platform and funded by the Flanders government of Belgium to coordinate inventorying activities within communities. But the thinking behind then at that particular time was to make the whole thing sustainable. There was need to have a system that would ensure that once the funding was over, once the funding came to an end, we still had to sustain the project. So as a result, we ended up participating at the end in 2018 from what has already been indicated by Cristina in a presentation on surveys that were done on the presence, breadth, and depth of ICH in universities in Southern Africa. The participating countries were 8, which are Botswana, Eswatini, which is formerly Swaziland, Lesotho, Malawi, Namibia, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. And of course, South Africa was also involved in this particular survey, although it is not a member of the SAICH platform. It was then during the presentation of the findings of that survey that members agreed that there had to be a network that would promote the offering of ICH programs in universities and colleges within the region. So the main finding that came out was there was very little in terms of teaching and research in Southern Africa's universities in as far as ICH is concerned. And the little that was available is something that was found to be in African languages and literature in some universities, or African languages and cultures. Then, of course, we have at master's level some universities that offer some MA in heritage studies. But again, these ones have a major emphasis on sites and monuments. It's more of the tangible side. So there was very little. And of course, what also came out was that at postgraduate level, our university, Chinhoyi University of Technology, of course, had some students undertaking postgraduate studies, Master of Philosophy and Doctor of Philosophy degree that were in line with intangible cultural heritage. So the only exception, of course, that was observed was the University of Zambia, where an undergraduate program on ICH and funded, of course, by UNESCO came on board last year in 2019. So this year is its second year running, and that's when they're also having their second intake. But of course, as already indicated, it was at the 2018 meeting that we had in Harare that SAICHANET was born. And the idea behind SAICHANET was that higher education institutions, especially universities and teachers colleges, were observed to be better placed in terms of coordinating and incorporating ICH issues into their curriculum. The belief and the hope is that this would then cascade down to the trend, to the schools after the teachers have been trained. And this also now fits into the new curriculum that the primary and secondary system in Zimbabwe has adopted, where heritage issues have become a compulsory element of the curriculum. So that makes things easier, and it pushes universities and colleges then to factor in ICH and other heritage matters into the curriculum. Now, what was also noted was that outside the funding periods that we've had, SAICHANET has the potential to continuously participate in inventorying activities because universities and colleges have budgets that are meant for community outreach and that are also meant for research activities. Some of these, then, the new areas that can come up are areas that relate to intangible cultural heritage or living heritage, it is at times called. So what the network noted was that programs can be developed through community engagement. What is it that the communities want? What is it that the communities are doing? Can we come up with some programs, postgraduate programs, other than master's, maybe a postgraduate diploma? Can we come up with undergraduate diploma where we recognize prior learning experiences that people had? All those are things that have come up. So the common objectives, of course, of the network include some of the following. There is need, of course, to support academic mobility and intellectual and intercultural learning. We are lacking in that area, especially in some instances where we are having so many specialized programs. If one is doing economics or economics, if one is doing engineering or engineering, and these are devoid of the link between the communities that they relate to and the programs that they deal with. And of course, there is need to encourage academic participation in safeguarding ICH. And of course, to that end, in 2019, we also had a workshop where we worked with academics in that area. Then, of course, there is need to foster complementarity between tertiary education institutions and communities. so that they fit into the programs that we offer. Now, the idea behind SciChanet is, of course, as already indicated, to have life outside the funding periods, and of course, to promote academic growth among its own members who are academics as well as other non-academics. And for those who are still joining the system, it promotes career growth. It creates space even for shifting focus, where someone may have felt that maybe they are hitting an end, or to generate new interest in other areas. These are some of the things. And of course, we also noted that this is more about linking institutions, not just about individuals, but institutions, and also possibly developing some sandwich programs which can be offered by more than one university. Something that we are already trying to work on with the University of Zambia and the Malawi University of Science and Technology, where we're trying to develop programs together so that at least our students would have some modules offered in one university, at least they become regional and international graduates themselves by going through those universities. And of course, there is a scope for cooperation between universities and the individual members of staff who will be participating in the whole activities. Now, there has been talk about COVID and all that stuff, and it has affected, we all know, everyone. And for the SciChanet, we were supposed to have had our first conference in either Malawi or Lesotho earlier this year. This has failed to take off because we cannot travel. This has meant that we have had to re-strategize, and what has come up is we are planning on a conference. But as we plan, we also face challenges, which may be peculiar to our situation in terms of connectivity. We have challenges. While connectivity may be available in some instances, there are costs that come with that, and some of the costs are quite exorbitant. And of course, at times in our country, communication itself is intermittent. We at times fail to connect due to poor network connections. The result, of course, has been we wait and hope and always connect when we can connect. But despite those challenges, as already indicated, we are working on having a conference, and we are working with our IT department to ensure that we have a seamless conference when it finally takes off. We do hope, things being okay, we may invite some of you to be online and participate in what we will be doing. So while members, of course, wait maybe and hope for a vaccine to be found, or maybe, as who says, for herd immunity to develop, we have encouraged members to find and document through online means local histories relating to ICH, of course, on how communities in the past have dealt with pandemics, because this issue of pandemics for most of us in this part of the world is not something new. I think you are all quite aware of Ebola and all that. So we have been exposed to some of these things, and what sanitizers, if any, because people have used certain indigenous ways of doing things. What is it that communities are developing or have developed as a way of ensuring their safety? And of course, what other issues like supplementary herbal teas or drinks that boost immunity that they've also developed, or that they already knew, but that they've gone back to now because there is COVID, and because they are also learning from others who are saying, in the past, when we had such a problem, we used this and that, and all the things that they've used in the past. Of course, we have also at CAT here followed up on some communities, of course, through calls and all that stuff, and we've learned that quarantining people at the very end of the day is not something that is new to this part of the world. People have been quarantined in the past for Ebola and also for leprosy. So those are not new things. But at least these things are being tapped into to encourage people to stay home, so that they understand that when they're asked to stay home, we are tapping again to that ICH. When asked to stay home, they will appreciate it's not new to them. It has always happened. And of course, you can see this in the proposed themes that are proposed for the conference. Like everyone else, of course, everything is at a standstill. But while we wait for things to improve, we have, as an institution, submitted our proposed regulations for a master's program in indigenous knowledge to a statutory body for assessment, so that, because we all know intangible cultural heritage is part, indigenous knowledge is part of ICH. So we hope that things would sail through. Of course, research at MPhil and DPhil levels continues. And in fact, at the end of this year, we are going to have 2 students graduating. One is focusing on the musical instruments of a group in Namibia. He's a Namibian student, of course, studying with us, and is focusing on the Nwanzi, a group of the Khoisan, the making of their musical instruments and the skills that have to be passed on. We have another one who is focused on what we call Hadza, which is an indigenous meal that is made in the southwestern part of the country, and the skills that are passed on and how they are passed on and all that stuff. And this one is at doctoral level. So, as in other countries, of course, teaching continues online, and some members say because of the changed circumstances, they will attend to matters relating to the development of undergraduate programs relating to ICH after the pandemic is under control. Their argument is this can only happen if they can travel, because at times you need to engage people one-on-one and understand and highlight why certain things have to be studied and done. Of course, in addition to the activities that are given above, we intend, as indicated, to have a conference which now focus on some of the following: inventorying COVID stories, the COVID-19 stories. How have people responded to the whole thing? How have people used? You see, we are saying, while we are in a pandemic, but we are saying in our situation at times, storytelling, oral histories have become part and parcel of how people engage and relate to one another while they sit at home and wait, not just watching TV. So what stories have come up, what stories have been created around this pandemic. Then, of course, how do we go about inventorying in the pandemic situation? Then, what other forms of ICH do we find useful in the shadow of COVID-19? These, of course, some of the themes that will be handled under the conference, we do hope. And some of the proposed conference themes are here as presented. We're talking of innovations in safeguarding ICH in the 21st century. What is it that we have to do? How can we approach it and all that stuff? ICH and social responsiveness under COVID-19. What happens to our practices? What has been the impact on people's practices? What is likely to be the result when we get out of the pandemic? Is life going to be the same even if the pandemic is gone or is now under control? Are we still going to engage? Is social distancing going to be part of us, or is going to go away? Those are questions that need to be understood and engaged with. Then we talk of oral histories and indigenous responses to pandemics. I think I've already indicated in some cases. Then challenges and opportunities in ICH regional activities. What are the challenges? Like in the case of our part of the world, we have different people or nationalities that have been divided by colonial boundaries. We find people in Mozambique, in Malawi, and Zambia, same culture, same practices. How do we come up with multinational nominations? How do we come up with inventorying of all those things? Because there are challenges. You need to travel across borders. What are the challenges? ICH and African Development Agenda lessons from current activities. We have what we are referring to as Agenda 2063 for Africa. How do we feed activities on ICH inventorying into that? How do we promote and safeguard in a changing world, in a changing economic setup, in changing political circumstances. Then, of course, redefining and activating the African ethos through ICH. Who are we as Africans? What does it mean to be African? We have philosophies like Ubuntu, being human. How does it relate to all those things? And ICH, of course, these conferences have come, suggestions for themes have come from colleagues, Mr. Moffat Moyo, University of Zambia, Miss Temashubin Kampule from Swaziland, Miss Frida Tawana from Namibia, and Dr. Laf Momas Buko and from Malawi, as well as other members. I thank you and stay safe.
Thank you, Dr. Mapara. Thank you for your presentation. I believe the experience of SAICHANET recall us on the significance of higher education efforts for supporting academic development and for promoting collaboration and complementarity of higher education institutions. But I believe it also points the possibilities for cooperation between the academy and the community, either for supporting inventory processes or nurturing new generations committed to ICH safeguarding. I have also taken note of your proposals regarding inventorying medical traditional knowledge in a way. Sorry if I'm putting it too simple. And pandemic stories, I believe that maybe there are some opportunities for collaboration, South-South collaboration, and also on your proposal for a blended or sandwich program. So I took note of that. Now, I would like to invite Professor Mónica Guariglio for the National University of Avellaneda in Argentina for her presentation titled ReCAPCILAC, a co-construction experience for ICH safeguarding. Mónica is coordinator of the Network of Academic Cooperation in Intangible Cultural Heritage in Latin America and the Caribbean, ReCAPCILAC, and the project leader of UNESCO Chair for Cultural Diversity Creativity. Mrs. Guariglio, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a little. Thank you, Maria, and thank you all ICH Asia Pacific for your invitation to share with all of you our work, what we are doing here in Latin America. Just to briefly tell you all what is our network, what is this co-construction experience we've done all together in Latin American region. To begin with, I want to show you our first meeting. These are my colleagues and the founders of the network. It was on November 2017 in Campo, Buenos Aires, Argentina. And I want to mention that in that opportunity, obviously we have the support of the field office of Montevideo, and our thanks to Mrs. Lydia Brito, the director. And also we have the support for setting up the network of the International Institute of Higher Education in Latin America, the IESALC, also the Regional Center for the Safeguarding of ICH in Latin America, CRISPIAL, and the Latin American Social Science Faculty, FLACSO. Altogether, we 2 days discussion from academics and decision makers from higher education institutions of the region, carrying out cultural management programs, particularly those that include ICH in their academic programs. In that opportunity, we discussed about precisely the needs to set up a network and discuss its objectives and functioning. Just to show you briefly, a network obviously is based on the 2003 Convention to reinforce ICH practices and experiences in Latin America and the Caribbean region. And here I show you the objectives we decided in that opportunity we are going to work on. First of all, promote the development of higher education in ICH, in Latin America and the Caribbean through cooperation. This point is important because we think we have a lot to do on higher education to include ICH discussions, ICH knowledge. Also, another point was encourage inter and multidisciplinary actions to generate synergies between different actors committed to ICH. This is important. We believe in an inter and multidisciplinary synergies, and we work on that, focus on that point. Also share knowledge and experiences on a democratic access through the implementation of a digital platform. I will show you afterwards to you part of our platform. Foster capacities on ICH safeguarding and in the context of promote sustainable and inclusive development. It's an issue, it's an important issue for us to link ICH safeguarding and sustainable development. Also develop joint teaching, research and extension activities on issues that had to do with had high relevance with ICH. And the last point, promote contents on ICH safeguarding in higher education agendas, specifically in cultural management training. We found that arts management, other disciplines need to know more about the importance of ICH in the context of higher education. Just to show you some activities we've done, and two very important ones in Paraguay in 2018, a meeting on cross-sectorial development of public policies. This was an important meeting organized together with the Minister of Culture of Paraguay and also the field office of Montevideo and our network. In that opportunity, the discussion was about heritage and creativity. We linked also debates on 2003 and 2005 convention and the importance of the relation between ICH and tourism and between ICH and creative industries, and also the importance of ICH safeguarding between young creators. The other meeting, the roundtable on the 14th ICH committee in Bogota, Colombia last year. And there we have the opportunity also to meet Mr. Wonomo Park from the network from Asia Pacific. And we discussed about the links between universities and ICH, also with the participation of Susanne Schnutgen from Capacity Development and Heritage Policy from UNESCO. It was really a very important meeting where we can exchange our points of view about what is the importance of improving the knowledge and the learning and teaching of ICH in the context of higher education. About one of your questions about the impact of COVID-19, we want to mention these two issues. First of all, what happened in higher education, in a higher education context, with the impact, with the COVID impact? Well, as it also Cristina said, new challenges drive contingency policies. We have to cancel activities, on-site activities, and migrate all pedagogical processes to virtual, to digital platforms, and also boosting on, of online meetings and activities. There has been a strong demand for immediate pedagogical innovation, priority with to teachers, and all our universities had to work on digital platforms. The suspension and cancellation of some research activities, extension programs, and collective practices. This point, collective practices, is very important for academics and professors, because many of the ICH research have to do with on-site activities. But the point I want to mention especially is the digital gap, because we found this is the main obstacle to overcome. In Latin America, well, my colleague Mapara has mentioned precisely this obstacle, the digital gap. No, we have to find solutions to this. And in terms of the network, of our network, we have at the beginning of the constitution of the setting up of a network, we have made a cyber infrastructure, and we have a platform, a digital platform, and that made possible the continuity of decision-making, network management, and members' participation. Actually, through the virtual platform provided by the Argentinian National Scientific and Technical Research Council, CONICET, we are working on asynchronous activities and synchronous activities through online tools provided by the CRESPIAL. Here you have an image of our collaborative environment, and well, we are in Argentina, and these are an image of tango music, and that is, you see there, the music instrument for tango music, the bandoneon, just to know. And here you have the link of our platform. What we think are the challenges of our network, and just to mention this four, we think we have to search and work on new alliances, on regional academic networks for South-South cooperation and interregional exchange. That is a very important issue. We are working on, and we have to work on, and this webinar gives us the opportunity to exchange our experiences, and we are sure we will continue in this alliance with all of you. And also develop methodological frameworks based on local demands and urgencies. This is a point I want to mention, especially because we think as ICH as a complex cultural object with an work emphasize on it from a decolonial and transdisciplinary perspective. Mirva has said at the beginning, mentioned something about our Latin point of view, and this is the point. We are discussing about ICH and about preconcepts on ICH. Sometimes it has been seen as a tourist or folk vision, and we are worried about it because we think ICH needs to be discussed. We need to discuss here in Latin America the Eurocentric and traditional conception of ICH and the importance of bearers of ICH, And as Mirva said also, we are sure that ICH improves higher education and brings us other ways of thinking. That's why we address ICH as one of the most important points, and we need to work on this decolonial and transdisciplinary perspective. Also highlight ICH in the 2030 agenda through innovative alliances with governmental and cultural institutions, international organizations, inter-university networks, and also the chairs, international chairs, UNESCO chairs, we're sure have to do a lot with these issues and to work together. And also I want to mention our interest, and we are working with the Ibero-American cultural space because it's another multilateral space that we think we have to do all the discussions about the importance of ICH and exchange our works. And well, of course, collaboration with the Secretariat at UNESCO Paris, the field offices, in our case with Montevideo field office, and the importance of working together with Category 2 centers, especially in Latin American region, the CRESPIAL. I show you here some of our colleagues and the countries we belong to. To also to what we are working on today, this is a very important interinstitutional activity within the framework of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, especially focused on the 17th SDG goal. This is an oriented research project integrated by 20 senior academics from these countries: Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, Chile, Dominican Republic, Mexico, and Uruguay. What the project works on, while collecting activities and programs implemented by different communities, governments, and local actors that stand out for the value of the role of ICH as a vector of social inclusion. This is what I meant before about our point of view and the decolonial perspective. Also developing theoretical and methodological guidelines for a multidimensional analysis of ICH practices, and the drafting of a policy brief supporting decision-making in the Latin American region. We think that this project will give us the opportunity to produce research and knowledge, and to help the decision makers to include ICH, the importance of ICH and ICH policies in the public policies, in cultural, specifically in cultural public policies. And the main goals of this activity are to generate evidence showcasing the ICH role in the development agenda, strengthen links between the academia and decision-making, as well as within the academic world in the post-COVID-19 context. As you know, we have found that in the academic world, the ICH knowledge is dispersed in many disciplines. We find it in anthropology, in arts management, in history, in environmental studies, and we think that there is a link inside the academic work we have to do, trying to focus on the importance of ICH and the ICH in higher education, and develop conceptual and methodological categories for approaching sustainability of community practices as in ICH as social inclusion vector. We think that community practices had a lot to bring to our research, and we have to, obviously we have to work together strongly. And also, finally, provide decision makers with guidelines for implementing ICH-oriented public policies in the framework of COVID-19 palliative measures. We think it is expected also to produce a publication with all this project results. And we think that we have a lot of work to do, and it's important to foster our networks and work together, because of this after the pandemic, COVID-19, at least in Latin America, we have to think, we are thinking today, and how to link together healthcare, gender, food security, social inclusion, and also resolve inequalities. And as I said previously, to solve the digital gap, to make possible to all students and academics, experts and researchers to work together and to have the possibility, we have to continue for a long time on this new pedagogical scenario on virtual platforms. We need to solve previous problems we have here in the Latin American region. I think my colleagues have said all regions are different. We have all of us different problems. We have to improve, and in our region, ICH living heritage is a very important issue and has to be shown to the higher education community in all its importance. Thank you, and thank you very much for sharing with all of you this presentation.
Thank you, Professor Guariglio. I believe that in line with the African experience, the Latin American experience assesses the significance of higher education networks for community development. In this case, but by strengthening the link between academia and decision makers. This network is working with such aim on strengthening the role of ICH in a perspective that I believe it could be defined as from, by, and for the southern countries. Now I would like to invite Ms. ENG Kim, Assistant Program Officer at Culture Unit of UNESCO Bangkok Office. As Ms. Montina couldn't join us today, ENG will deliver the last presentation on network of higher education's institutions for heritage management and ICH safeguarding in the Asia Pacific. Ms. ENG, the floor is yours.
Hello, so do you hear me clearly?
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
And see my screen as well? As she has introduced that I am here on behalf of my colleague Montira Unakul, who unfortunately could not participate at this webinar. So I would like to first start with before introducing the various initiatives for collaborating and networking, I would like to kind of set the scene on why collaborating is so important, and also to provide some kind of an overview of where our office is trying to head towards. So if you see a couple of numbers that are provided on the screen, you can see that 90% of World Heritage sites and museums are closed globally at the moment because of the COVID-19 situation. And amongst these museums, 10% are never to reopen again, so completely closed forever. As it had been introduced in the previous sessions that had been organized by ECAP, cultural institutions and higher education institutions are providing various innovative tools to tackle this kind of situation by providing perhaps online tours, virtual exhibitions, and maybe virtual teaching tools and virtual field trips, even webinars and so forth. But this kind of tools also vary massively according to regional context and capacity. So for instance, if you look at the screen, only 5% of countries in Africa and small island developing countries have indicated that they can offer online content in a UNESCO survey that had been conducted recently. And then more recently in Thailand, the government of Thailand announced that 30% of tourism business exited the markets recently after the COVID-19. So all of these are leading to a fundamental change on how we approach cultural heritage and how we devise policies regarding cultural heritage, and how we plan business regarding cultural heritage. And more importantly to this group, how we teach cultural heritage management. So in this regard, I wanted to think a little bit on the sustainable development and cultural heritage management as well. So as many of you would be aware, there could be 3 aspects to sustainable development that is in relation to conserving heritage. One would be the smallest part, which is sustaining the heritage resources themselves. For this, like if it's regard to ICH, it would be the safeguarding of the ICH domains. Then there is the aspect of heritage resources as a driver for sustainable development within the culture sector. So for instance, using the ICH to make crafts or doing tourism or any kind of other opportunities that are made through safeguarding ICH. Then there is heritage as an enabler for broader sustainable development across all sectors, including economic, social, and environmental branch. So this would be what Professor Mapara just mentioned of using traditional practice in medicine to contribute to public health, or what Professor Guariglio mentioned in how ICH could contribute to social inclusion. So on the basis of all of this situation and where we are trying to head towards through the higher education in cultural heritage management, UNESCO Bangkok have been developing a competence framework for cultural heritage management. This initiative started in 2018, and in a couple of months, I'm happy to share that we'll be launching an official e-publication that would be shared through UNESCO Bangkok websites. It had been a 2-year process between heritage-related organizations such as IUCN, ICROM, ICOMOS, and representatives from World Heritage Site managers and professors and practitioners in heritage who got together and tried to develop this set of skills and knowledge that are needed to sustainably manage cultural heritage. So here we divide the competencies into 4 groups. First of which is core competencies that are directly related to managing heritage. Then it comes the managerial competencies, which is more in relation to how you manage an organization or how you manage a institution, just in more of the managerial competencies like the financial management, information management, administration, or communication with the community. And then there's the personal competencies, which are more in relation to personal hygiene, which is becoming more and more important at the current situation, and perhaps keeping time or things like that. And then there is the specialized technical competencies, which we identified as an example, as a sample, list of disciplines that may be required in managing heritage on top of what is identified in core managerial and personal competencies. For instance, if you're an anthropologist that's working on a heritage management plan, then what are the skills and knowledge that you need to have on top of being a specialist in anthropologists? So those are what's listed in the specialized technical competencies. So then a set of a competent individual would have core managerial personal competencies, then plus a selected number of specialized technical competencies in order to very sustainably and comprehensively manage cultural heritage. These competencies have actually been translated into a set of learning outcomes for postgraduate education as well. But we do realize that the ICH, what is actually really happening in the ICH sector is not fully captured under this framework. Rather, it's dealt with in the specialized technical competencies under anthropology, archaeology, and the intangible cultural heritage, museology, and sections like that. But we think this could be a starting point where to reflect about the types of skills and knowledge the students need to be equipped with when they graduate from a higher education institution teaching intangible cultural heritage. So in the end, when this competence framework is completed and implemented, we think it could benefit the heritage site management or ICH safeguarding agencies to strengthen their staff capacities, and also for higher education institutions and training institutions in the region to design courses, curricula, and to even reform some kind of a qualification standard to meet the on-the-ground needs in cultural heritage management. Sorry, I missed one part. So, as you can see, there are so many things that we think a cultural heritage manager should be equipped of. But then when we did a quick mapping exercise during a meeting in 2019 between universities that's offering cultural heritage management related courses, we found that there's no single university that's offering courses or classes that covers all of these competencies, nor it may be not even possible. So that's why we think it's very important for universities and higher education institutions to collaborate on achieving these common goals. So I would like to introduce a couple of initiatives that are that have to be agreed directly with UNESCO, which are the two top ones that's listed here on the screen. The first one is UNESCO Chair Program, which is more of a bilateral agreement between one university and UNESCO. And the next one is a Unitwin program, which is an agreement between 3 to 10 universities as a group to work on a certain topic and doing an agreement with UNESCO. So these two are not restricted to our region in the Asia Pacific, but it's more of a general program that UNESCO is offering to encourage collaboration between higher education universities. And below the Asian Academy for Heritage Management and APENIC is a independent heritage management related network in the Asia Pacific that is run by a separate bureau or a committee. Then since this course is a APENIC initiative also, I would like to provide a little bit more detailed information about APENIC. So it's Asia Pacific Higher Education Network for Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage. It was established in 2018 and currently with 19 members of universities in the Asia Pacific region. The network aims to foster and strengthen capacity for safeguarding of ICH in the Asia Pacific through collaborative programs and activities. The current secretariat is located in the South Korea National University of Cultural Heritage. So if you would like to join the network, you would have to email this university. And I'm sure Boram can share with you the email address of the secretariat. So the establishment of this network was based on a survey on tertiary education institutions for Intangible Cultural Heritage Network in the Asia Pacific region. I don't want to go through all of these points in the interest of time, but if you access the URL that is provided at the bottom left of my screen, you would be able to access the full e-publication of the results that came out of this survey. So the field of cooperation for APENIC is teaching and learning, research on safeguarding, and services to communities and society. Here are a few of recent activities that have been conducted by APENIC, which includes the first general meeting in July 2018, the capacity building workshop in July 2019, and just a month after, in August 2019, APENIC organized a field school for young researchers for 8 days. And of course, this whole webinar series is also part of the APENIC program. Then together with the APENIC, there's another network in the Asia Pacific that had been running for the last 20 years, actually. So it's kind of like a sister network. But unfortunately, although there are overlapping members between APENIC and Asian Academy, and that APENIC focuses more on the ICH aspect of higher education, this network is a network of institutions throughout the Asia Pacific region that offers professional training in the general cultural heritage management. So it was established in 2001, and currently there are more than 62 core members, which are the institutional members in the network. And the current secretariat is located in Nanjing, China, and is called Southeast University. These on the left side are the objectives of the network. And I would just like to quickly go through the activities that had been conducted. So what I have put in bold are what has actually been conducted, and the others still in bullet points are what's was intended to be conducted, but then it wasn't actually made possible. So there was a postgraduate training through on-site field schools, a certifying in-field practitioners through the Cultural Heritage Specialized Guide program, a research conference, awards program for outstanding student work, and online database for heritage management experts had been established before. But there, as you can see a lot of dream activities that had not been actualized yet. For instance, executive development for decision makers, which I guess overlaps with Professor Guariglio's future activities as well. And like training of trainer programs and student internship programs, all of these activities were really planned to be implemented through the network. But we did see quite a lot of difficulties in collaborating together without a concrete framework to work towards. So that was one of the bases of why the competence framework was developed. So we have a few upcoming activities, and these are very concrete and will happen for sure. So ICROM, Asian Academy, APNIT, and a Think City, which is a community-based urban regeneration organization in Malaysia. We are developing a series of webinars together based on the core competencies from the framework. And it would be run through November this year to April next year. And it targets heritage practitioners, including World Heritage Site Management officers, local stewards of heritage, heritage educators, and trainers. And in 2021, we are going to implement the competency framework at World Heritage Sites in the Southeast Asia region. And AAHM actually had a executive committee meeting earlier this year, and they have agreed to a few field schools and conferences organized together within the network. So at this point, I would like to note that the competency framework that we have introduced was designed for heritage management in general. But then the role of ICH and its bearers are becoming increasingly more important. And we think all these networks, for instance, in the Asia Pacific, the AAHM and APNIT should work together and use the framework as a common framework for collaboration. We already have some active members who are involved in both networks, like Neil from Ahmedabad University and Crystal Buckley from Deakin University that I think you would have heard of from APNIT activities. And judging from the 20 years of IAAHM, a common framework for collaboration and a common practical project is essential to facilitating actual working together. And considering that everybody is so busy and there's a lot of things going on within the universities, and actually there are quite a lot of bilateral collaboration already taking in place, but the importance is how everyone works together to fill in the gaps and also to improve the curriculum that they already have. And also to build a profession for heritage management, including safeguarding ICH, that is more recognized. So we think these kind of networking and collaboration activities should be based on concrete tasks. And also it is important that the tasks should be mutually beneficial for us and for the higher education universities, higher education institutions, and any heritage practitioners in the region as well. Okay, so that's it from us.
Okay, thank you so much, ENG Kim. Thanks for your presentation. I believe we are out of time now. We have no more time, but and we have a lot of questions and things to discuss together, and many points for future collaboration. I believe it would be very nice to share them after this meeting. But Kim, I'm sure we can do that later. But maybe just to close this meeting, we have several questions to discuss, but maybe we can just take one of them and give you 2 minutes for answer it, so we can have like a general conclusion of this meeting together. The question will be, how do you think that the network initiatives introduced today can collaborate and support each other across the continents? So if you, Cristina, if you want to start with, you have 2 minutes to give us your impressions on how to continue, and then we can go with Dr. Mapara, Mónica, and ENG Kim.
Thank you very much. You give me 2 minutes, but you don't give me time to think about it.
No, yeah, I know. But the idea is to just a very fresh idea and conclusion. Not that.
Of course. Well, the first thing for me is the willingness, to collaborate, and I'm sure about that. Because we have been in previous activities together. For example, I was in Latin America when they created the network. It was such a pleasure to be there. So you can see the willingness to collaborate as long as, for example, in that moment, they invited us to participate. In Asia, for example, we were in touch in the beginning to do this research, to set up the methodological issues in order to be able to have data comparable in the future. Okay. So, in the only case that, for example, I didn't have the chance to collaborate has been in the activities carried out in Africa, but I'm sure we are on time. So for me, that's very important. Seminars and meetings, gatherings like these ones are also very important, because we really need to know, the first thing is to know what the others are doing in order to start collaborating. So we need to meet each other. Regretfully only online now, but I think that this is a starting point for future collaboration. To exchange information and knowledge, and by means of different activities like these ones nowadays, but hopefully in the future we will have time to carry out seminars, conferences, field work, studies, and so on. Together. And well, that's it, my first brainstorming. Thank you.
Thank you, Cristina. Jacob? Please unmute your micro, because we can't hear.
All right. Thank you. I was saying here, I think I would go with by what Cristina said on decoloniality, which I think is quite important in this situation where we are, if initiatives are to go ahead, then we have to break this monocultural thing where there is this element of Western hegemony on other cultures. So through initiatives, through working together, only then can we come to realize and appreciate the cultures that we have and the contributions that they can make to promote the diversity that we are and the growth that we need, and so that our communities become better communities, become people who are empowered by their own living heritage. And of course, universities, academics, and everyone who is on this platform and others who can come aboard can then come aboard, and we can co-publish works, develop teaching materials, and all that. Thank you.
Thank you. So until now, we have just talking about very practical steps we can take together, generate comparable data for the future and exchange information, maybe on the activities that you tell us that are being implemented, seminars and meetings, and co-publishing and teaching and pedagogical materials. Despite a general point of the development of a general conceptual framework, from the South in a way. Mónica? We cannot hear you. Okay.
Yes. I agree with what Jacob have said recently. And I think we have to establish agendas just to support each other. I think we have to work on exchanging researches and joining projects. And but with this, what we establish as the colonial perspective, the monocultural view of the ICH doesn't help. We have to work on from our platforms through webinars, perhaps, or if possible, face-to-face in the future, but with this idea of trying to deepen the concept, the idea of the ICH. We are very worried about that view of ICH that brings us the tourism policies, or people that think it's only a folk experience. So I insist we have to collaborate together to contribute to foster the concept of ICH and the importance of ICH in public policies, but also in higher education institutions. Thank you, and thank you all.
Thank you, Mónica. ENG Kim, would you like to add your conclusions?
Yes. So, well, first of all, it was actually great to hear from all over the world on what you guys are working on with regards to ICH, because to be honest, I didn't really know that there are so many things happening all over the world, like within these kind of networks. So this initiative itself was actually very great. With regards to maybe something a bit concrete to work together, maybe I think it had been mentioned several times that ICH at the moment are being taught at several disciplines, and there are not many ICH focused programs in the higher education institutions. So I think it may be helpful to develop some kind of a learning outcome, a list of things that any ICH programs should be teaching as in general in all over the world. Maybe because you know, nowadays it's a bit difficult to meet in person, and working on the documents could be a safer or a more productive way to carry forward a few of the networking and collaborating initiatives. So yeah, that's what I would like to suggest.
Thank you, ENG. Well, I believe we have a lot to do now, and we all agree on the main steps on the road ahead. I appreciate the invitation. I thank you again, Boran Kim, and all of you for participating and giving us insights for our work from the field offices and for future collaboration among us, not only with you and the networks and your universities, but also among field offices in the UNESCO universe. So thank you. And Boran Kim, if you want to close.
For your wonderful moderation today. So thank you all of you. We really appreciate you being here with us. So the next session of the ICH webinar series will be on 12 August, like next month. So please check ENCATC's website for the information. Okay, thank you again for joining us today, and I hope to see you all next time with our next webinar series. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Take care.